Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karker Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis as well as response, and talking about how these chapters one by one connect to the entirety of the manga. So if any of that interests you, you are in the right place for this Bleach content. As always, we will begin with a rereading of the chapter. So we will begin with Volume 5 of the Bleach manga, Chapter 35. This is a Shonen Jump manga with story and art by Kubo Tite. A little while ago, I don't know what I was thinking, but I bought a suit for the first time in my life. A black suit for all occasions. But even before caring about such occasions, I realized there are no such occasions. Kubo Tite. Bleach is author Kubo Tite's second title. Kubo made his debut with Zombie Powder, a 4-volume series for Weekly Shonen Jump. To date, Bleach has sold nearly 7 million volumes and has been translated into 7 different languages. Beginning its serialization in 2001, Bleach is a mainstay in the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump. This volume is rated T for teen. It contains fantasy violence and tobacco use. I can't protect you without holding a sword. I can't embrace you while holding a sword. Bleach, Volume 5, Right Arm of the Giant. This is the Bleach All-Stars and Stories. We have Tatsuki Arasawa, Chad Yasutora, Uryu Ishida, Ichigo Kurosaki, Rukia Kuchiki, Orihime Inoue. The plot so far is that 15-year-old Ichigo Strawberry Kurosaki can see ghosts. Otherwise, he was a typical high school student until the day a hollow, a malevolent lost soul, came to eat him, and the Soul Reaper, Rukia Kuchiki, stepped into his life. To defeat the hollow and save his family, Ichigo let Rukia transfer some of her Soul Reaper powers to him. But when Rukia was left powerless, she recruited Ichigo for her war against the murderous soul-gobbling hollows. Ichigo gradually hones his skills in spiritual combat. Now he encounters the Quincy Uryu Ishida, who can destroy a hollow with a single shot. And this formidable being has already informed Ichigo that he hates Soul Reapers. Bleach, Volume 5, The Right Arm of the Giant. Chapter 35, Will You Be My Enemy? I'm Uryu Ishida, Quincy, and I hate Soul Reapers. What did you say? In other words, Ichigo Kurosaki, I'm saying I hate you. Bleach, Chapter 35, Will You Be My Enemy? Wow! Third, huh? You're awesome, as always. Wow, I didn't know you were that smart, Orihime. You might not look at it, you might think it to look at her, but she's always been pretty smart. Ryo's second? She excels in both literary and the martial arts. And she was the freshman class rep. She was? So that's why the teachers don't bother her. She went to nationals in track, too. For real? Wow. Yeah, well, I'm going to nationals. Huh? What? Didn't I tell you guys? I won the city tournament in May. Our karate team rocks this year. The boys' team is going to nationals, too. And the girl who won 3 nationals has joined the team. Yes. Once again, there are no traitors among us. None of us has made it to the top 50. Excellent, Captain. No, don't look, Sergeant Kojima. Reality is brutish and ugly. It can only pollute our pure hearts. Yes, sir, Captain Asano. We hate you, Ichigo. We'll never let you hang out with us again. That seems kind of drastic. Idiots, idiot. Right, Chad. You can hang out with us, Chad. You're not on that vile list. What? Ah! Stay away from us! You're possessed by spirits! Smart, dead, evil spirits! Deceive us! I'll never hang out with you guys again! Ever! Yet they're not nearly as obnoxious as they used to be. Yeah. I hate you. Who was that guy? What was that guy? And that's no way to introduce yourself. I should have wailed on him. He was the intruder. That was Soul Reaper work. Where does he get off shoving his nose into our business and then mouthing off? Next time I see that jerk. That jerk. What was his name? Something Ishida? Ernie? That's not it. That sounds like a puppet. Ari? No, I'm never gonna remember it. Did you say Ishida? Or Hime? You know him? Well, he's in our class. Ishida is. He is? Are you Ishida, right? That's him right there. What the? First? See? He's in I3. Don't you remember? Oh, forget it, Orihime. He's hopeless with names and faces. He still doesn't know half the class. Stuff it. Ishida isn't like you guys. He doesn't talk much. Maybe that's why you can't remember him. How do you know all this? Are you friends with him? No. We're just in the same crafts club. Crafts club? It's true. He really is in our class. See? Oh, he's leaving. Wait, look. Michiru's taking her torn doll to him. What's he got? A pencil box? No, it's a sewing kit. Sewing. You fixed him. Thank you, Ishida. Don't do that. It was nothing. Oh, okay. Sorry? See that? If it weren't for his mouth, he'd be a nice guy. Hey, did something happen between you two? Well, kinda. It's no big deal. Sure, no big deal. Are you going to follow me all the way home, Ichigo Kurosaki? Darn, busted. How long have you known? Since you and Orihime poked your heads into the classroom. Wow, good job. You're sharp. You allow your spiritual energy to radiate with foolish abandon. A psychic monkey would notice you. What was that? You can't even sense the energy of others when they're right under your nose. The fact is, you didn't even notice me until today. Sorry, I'm terrible with names and faces. That's why I never. That's not it. I sensed your unusual aura the moment I arrived at this school. And I was aware that you became a Soul Reaper in mid-May. I even know Rukia Kuchiki's true identity. That's... Yes, Reiraku, Spirit Ribbon. Manifestations of spiritual energy. A good Soul Reaper can see it right away, and a skilled Soul Reaper can even touch it. If you were any good, you'd have noticed mine. And... Did you even know that a Soul Reaper's Reiraku is a different color? It's red. I am a Quincy. I have the power to kill hollows. Would you like to play a game, Kurosaki? To see who's superior, a Soul Reaper or a Quincy? I'll show you just how worthless you Soul Reapers are. Ishida fixed you. That is it for Chapter 35 in the beginning of Volume 5 of the Bleach manga. So yeah, pretty neat chapter, right? Kind of cool getting into it. So with this volume, we are seeing Chad on the cover, which is pretty cool. Maybe Chad will get to do some kind of cool things in this volume. We'll see. But let's get into the analysis and response for this chapter. So we get I don't know if I'm meant to read that as like kind of the moon hanging in the sky, but it's certainly those sort of windswept clouds sort of thing. I don't think we're supposed to read that as the sun. I think we're supposed to read that as, the moon in the evening sky, right? Because the moon is visible during the evening, before it's night. So it's kind of interesting that we get another shot of the moon like this. It's not our usual crescent moon encounter, right? That we've come to associate with hollows, perhaps, but it certainly kind of gives the impression that there will be this sort of supernatural encounter. And of course, here we are with Ishida having an encounter here with Ichigo after having just blasted this hollow. And so, kind of interesting when you get the black sort of backgrounded pages here, backgrounded panels. I think that's to indicate this is a flashback sequence. This isn't happening, in media res right now. This is sort of before where we currently are. So, coming from the last chapter, this all previously kind of happened. Yeah, so we get, especially the shot of Ishida really looking down upon Ichigo, really hating him because he is a Shinigami. And then we end up jumping back to the school situation. Obviously, we see that Ishida is top of the page, top of the final exam scores. Kind of interesting is that this is changed from the previous chapter. So in the previous ones, we had both Ryo Kunieda and Ori Yoshida both were rank 1 and they had a tied score. But here that's been changed. I think Ichigo's position's also been changed too from the previous volume. And I wonder, if that's I can't imagine that's a translation thing, right? Also with class 3, I realize now, that's like their actual homeroom class. I thought Ichigo and Ishida weren't even in the same homeroom, but it turns out that they are. So there's even further no excuse for Ichigo not realizing that Ishida's been there. Though I don't think he was drawn in any of the background scenes for those homerooms, so he was hidden until volume 4, as far as I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, here we do get confirmation of a couple of different things. We also see, of course, Orihime got number 3, so she's also not as dull as she might seem, which does get pointed out by Tatsuki. I do like this little affirmation, Tatsuki letting Orihime know that she's awesome as always, and gives her, little head pats. Orihime's enjoying that sort of adoration or affection, or at least affirmation, But yeah, we get a little bit of talk of Rio, and we also get confirmation that, of course, Tatsuki is kind of kicking ass in karate too. So just kind of a reminder of a lot of these other characters, really. We get them drawn and made kind of out to be smarter than maybe we expected our main cast to be, which is pretty neat. I like that, we scroll through all here. We could see Chizuru actually at 31 there. But we start to get all of these rankings, and of course, Keigo and Mizuru are having this really bonding moment about not being in the top 50 of their class, which, I mean, I guess there's 322 students in their grade, right? So it makes sense that perhaps, I assume they're in their grade, right? In their entire, they're taking the same exam. So it makes sense that, they both don't identify as being these huge nerds. that they're turning it for a sense of pride. But of course, Ichigo's here at 23. I thought in the last volume he was at 17. So yeah, I think it has definitely moved around. Um, and you gotta wonder why, right? Because I don't think there's much of a difference between 17 and 23. But it's curious. It's a curious difference from the previous one that I don't really have any explanation for. But it's something to note. Obviously, I like that this all gets played for gags, and then of course Chad points out that he too is here in the top 50, even higher than Ichigo at number 11. And I think a lot of this really kind of serves to set apart our main cast, right? Like that we have, of course, we know that Orihime, Chad, and Ichigo are all more spiritually aware, and they're kind of in this different grouping from these other characters of especially Mizuru and Keigo, right? That we have these, we're already kind of creating this stratification between the characters that we have in the main cast. But I think this is also reaffirmation of them sort of having a little bit more going on with them than we expect. Of course, Orihime, ever sort of aware of Ichigo and ever kind of, capable of honing into the things that are bothering him, notices that something's kind of going on with Ichigo as Ichigo is trying to think about, trying to process sort of what's going on with Ishida. And yeah, we get again that fantastic sort of panel of him looking down upon Ichigo getting really kind of pissed off about that. It's kind of interesting that he doesn't even remember, of course, Ishida's name, which brings us back to that sort of thing that, of course, Ishida points out, right? That Ichigo, it's not an issue even of not recognizing names. Ichigo is just not as aware as he maybe thinks that he is, right? Not spiritually aware even. That he lacks that sort of perception, and that's a failing of his. At least that's what Ishida thinks, right? That's Uryu's take on it. Yeah, I like that. Of course, we get the gag that, of course, he's number one, which if you hadn't noticed yet, of course he is. Yeah, I like Tatsuki kind of giving Ichigo a hard time of Ichigo still not even knowing half the people in the class, but like us as the reader probably doesn't either. I mean, I can admit I also have a hard time with names and faces. More names than faces. Like if I know I can recognize somebody, no problem. But connecting a name to them is difficult at times. It's one of the kind of struggles of teaching, especially, is having a lot of new students all the time and trying to kind of make that connection between the names and faces as you're going through all of that. But yeah, I like that it gets established that, of course, Ishida is in the crafts club, and so they poke in there to get a look at him. I think we've seen this character's design in the previous chapter before, but I don't know that we recognize any of these other background characters. Regardless, it's cute to think that Orihime is in the same crafts club as Ishida, and clearly Ishida's this sort of virtuoso, right? He's able to really quickly pull out the sewing kit and fix the doll. So clearly he's very talented, has a lot of dexterity to him, but also he's got this kind of severe personality. And so it's interesting to see that brought up because we have that with Rukia kind of clashing with Ichigo initially, where she's very kind of self-serious and severe, but then ends up having that kind of lighter side to her too. Whereas so far with Ishida, he seems just straight up self-serious and severe, right? He's like, oh, that was nothing. You don't have, like, don't do that. Like, not even like you don't have to, praise me like that or thank me or anything like that. But like, don't do that. It wasn't a big thing that you had to thank me over. So yeah, like that. Of course, Orihime says like, yeah, I want for his mouth to be a nice guy. Orihime is pretty optimistic, I think. And of course, she realizes that there's something going on with Ichigo, but because Ichigo doesn't want to talk about it and is willing to kind of play it off, Orihime kind of has that moment of recognition where she realizes, just like for herself, that like he doesn't want to needlessly kind of upset other people, that he would rather focus on other things. Um, and so she's willing to kind of write it off. It's like, yeah, sure, it's no big deal. Like if that's what you say it is, like that's how I'm going to approach it. I'm not going to worry about it. Yet again, we get the power lines as always, especially these upward shots of like the clouds and power lines. I like, of course, we get Ishida walking home, and then this very clear like, hey, you're gonna follow me all the way home. He has very distinctive footwear as well. His shoes, which if you go back and check out Volume 4, you can definitely see there's a couple shots just of people's feet are shoes, and you can really tell that Ishida is there because you don't get a lot of direct images of him. You just kind of get him in the background, so a lot of time you can tell it's him because of his shoes or his clothing. Anyway, and I like that gets juxtaposed here to Ichigo's shoes too, which is an interesting little detail. But yeah, like this entire back and forth where he's being very, like I said, very severe, very serious, also talking down to Ichigo, and Ichigo is just kind of like clapping, being sarcastic, kind of diffusive of the situation. And we get this very distinct, you didn't even notice me until today, right? But I've been aware of you this entire time, and I think that especially the way that panel's drawn, and using the text bubble to obscure part of his face kind of gives him a sinister look, right? As we get this character established, this sort of rival even, because he does challenge Ichigo at the end of this. But yeah, this whole, and this tracks, of course, if you remember, that he became a Soul Reaper mid-May, and he even knows Rukia's true identity, of course, as a Soul Reaper. So that's kind of interesting. We get also, as we go forward here, a mention of the Reiraku again. So those spirit ribbons flicker up as Ishida calls upon them, which, if you remember, this is the technique that Ichigo used in order to find the spirit of I believe it was the boy spirit and the parakeet, right? Whenever they were looking for Chad. And so Rukia was very surprised because that's like an advanced kind of Soul Reaper technique. She mentioned that's only kind of more advanced Soul Reapers can do that, but Ichigo is able to without even any sort of training. So it's a neat moment because it clearly evokes that moment that was kind of a win for Ichigo, where like he very clearly expressed natural sort of talent towards this. But this is a moment where Ishida is giving Ichigo a really hard time over this, and that he's really kind of talking down to Ichigo and expressing how less perceptive Ichigo is, even though we know that's not necessarily the case. Like, yeah, he's not aware of everything, clearly, but he's got more going on than I think Ishida gives him credit for. I think this is specifically meant to, the way that this comes up is very specifically meant to call back to that and remind us of the fact that, it's not meant to be a moment of like, oh man, Ichigo doesn't know anything. Sucks to suck, Ichigo. It's more like Ishida doesn't completely understand Ichigo and looks down upon him because he doesn't understand him. But yeah, good Soul Reaper can see it right away. Skilled Soul Reaper can even touch them, which, as we know, I think Ichigo reached out and grabbed one. So we do get that mentioned, and I like that of course he says, if you're any good, you'd have noticed mine. But as he reaches out, he pulls out this red one, which indicates, of course, that Ichigo is a Soul Reaper. It's not said if Quincy have any sort of special color or anything like that, but that the Soul Reaper's Reiraku being a different color is important. right? That very clearly there's something significant about Soul Reapers that changes their spirit ribbon, their Reiraku. So that's kind of interesting. But then he also brings up that he's a Quincy, right? So that's a term that we've had thrown around. Obviously, the last chapter or the last volume, I guess the last chapter as well. So Quincy Archer hates you, and we haven't really had any more expression of what a Quincy is. We just know that Ishida is a Quincy, whatever that might be. But that gets elaborated on here as he expresses that Quincy, he has the power to kill hollows, which obviously we saw him, shoot down that hollow, but the implication of killing a hollow, right? That's different. I think that implication is very much meant to imply that like he actually kills them, not that the Soul Reapers obviously they're cleansing hollows. I mean, obviously the early language they would use like vanquish, right? I believe that's what Ruki originally said, but it very quickly got turned to cleanse, right? They're cleansing these hollows, right? They absolve them of their sins so that they can move on to Soul Society. But that's not what Ishida's saying. He's not saying I have the power to cleanse hollows. He's saying he has the power to kill them. And certainly the way in which he exploded that previous hollow didn't indicate that kind of evaporating into dust that happened, anytime that Ichigo defeated one of them. So it's interesting to think that there's maybe some implication towards the difference in which Quincy interact with hollows versus Shinigami. And maybe that also speaks towards a fundamental difference in the way that they kind of think about souls and sin and the hollows in general, right? Where maybe there's something there about this fundamental difference in ideology, where Soul Reapers really value the human soul and feel like the hollow is just like a moment of, the human becoming this kind of monster, but it can be absolved of its sins, right? So there's this idea that maybe, souls can over time repent, right? Whereas Ishida is much more executioner in that, right? Where if a soul becomes a hollow and does these horrible things and is this monster, then it deserves to be killed rather than given a chance at retribution. So that's maybe an interesting difference, but we'll get more into that as we get to hear a little bit more about this. But clearly Ishida's got a whole complex about Soul Reapers, right? He hates Soul Reapers and he wants to see who's superior, a Soul Reaper or a Quincy. And he wants to prove to Ichigo just how worthless Soul Reapers are. And certainly you can maybe think about that, right? Because if Soul Reapers are, it's questionable, right? Because it's like, okay, well, if Soul Reapers are really effective, then like what are they really doing, right? They're just helping these souls kind of move on and continue this cycle. Whereas Quincy might be able to eradicate all the hollows if they're just killing hollows. So I don't know. Like it's you have to wonder about like what he really means here whenever he's talking about how worthless the Soul Reapers are. Because whenever you think about the functionality of a Soul Reaper, Rukia kind of explains, right? Soul Reapers exist to help hollows move on, perform the Kanso, but really to protect human souls too. And so maybe Quincy, maybe he's asserting that Quincy are better at that to a degree. That Quincy maybe are better at protecting people, and certainly, being able to notice where the hollow is right away and then shoot it from far away might indicate that he might be, in fact, better at this whole hollow elimination thing and protecting people than Ichigo might be. So it's calling into question Soul Reapers and the Soul Reapers as an institution and as a kind of thing, but also it's this personal challenge to Ichigo, right? That he's calling out just how pointless everything that Ichigo's been doing has been. So that's something to think about. Of course, we also here have Rukia returning to Urahara's shop. As we know, she's aware that her phone isn't busted, but after having encountered this Quincy, she might have some words to share with Urahara, and so we have that to consider too. But then the chapter ends. So there's quite a bit there. As far as chapters go, it's not the most exciting one for me. I think the kind of most interesting thing for me is especially just Ishida kind of starting this challenge with Ichigo and calling for the spirit Revens. I like the sewing stuff is cute. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of focus here on getting a little bit more about Ichigo, as well as a reminder of how the main kind of people in their group stand apart. Though it's interesting that, of course, Chizuru is on that list, but not much gets made out of the top 50 and her being there. But yeah, neat chapter. I do like it. It moves things along. It builds on Ishida in ways that are interesting and unexpected. Um, and all in all, I think the art in it really works. We talked about before, kind of that having a very distinctive way of drawing the characters and Kubo getting more comfortable with the ways that he's depicting these characters. And you can really see a lot of that come out in Ishida's design, where he has these very, very effective use of lines to indicate, like the seam of his robe here. Um, the way that this line gets thicker and thinner at points, thickens out as it comes down to the sleeve, foregrounding it a little bit more. A lot of that, I think, just speaks towards Kubo becoming more comfortable with his art and becoming more capable at depicting these characters. So I like all of that. There's surely a loss of that sketchiness, that sort of appealing amateurish quality. I think it's still there to a degree, but we're getting a little bit more of this polished, sort of in control artwork, and I like that a lot too. Um, and of course, as always, the expressions for the characters are fantastic. There's a lot of really good expressions in this, like this one of Ishida really looking down at Ichigo and getting cut by the side of the page, um, just making him like looking down upon a bug even is really great. We get some lovely expression work from all the other characters, both in gag stuff and just nice drawings of them. I like that image of Tatsuki. I'm trying to find there was I guess it's really far ahead. There's really good. I mean, obviously, like this Ishida with the really pushing up the glasses sort of anime deal. He's very extra in that way. But yeah, I like this, especially this panel of him. It really sells this sort of like disdain that he has for Ichigo and for, by extension, really Shinigami, and therefore by extension Ichigo is really what it is. So we haven't it hasn't been made clear why he hates Shinigami, but clearly there's some sort of thing there with him feeling like he's superior to them, right? And that maybe we haven't had Quincy mentioned yet, right? So there's clearly something going on there, where the fact that Ruki hasn't even brought Quincy up yet as a thing, um, maybe the whole idea is that we're supposed to think that perhaps Quincy aren't as big a deal as Shinigami are, right? That if we're to take this as like there's a whole soul society, right? And there are Shinigami set for every district. Well, then why haven't we heard about these Quincy if they can handle hollows as well, right? And they're humans that can handle hollows. Do they have some sort of organization of their own? What's going on there? So it's curious. It opens up a lot of questions and it builds upon the world in a really neat way, with just having a character that opens all of that to us. But obviously, because that character is at odds with Ichigo, we're not going to get a lot of that information immediately. So we're left in the dark, just like Ichigo is. But yeah, very very solid chapter. Like I said, not one of my favorite. Not a lot of really happening other than that Riraku scene and the sewing scene, but I think it's effective nevertheless. I don't think it really wastes its time. It does a good job spending every page kind of building up these characters and these moments and putting forth this forward momentum towards this challenge that's going to come down between Ichigo and Ishida. And yeah, so you typically call him Ishida, even though I knew his first name is Uryu. Um, yeah. Eh. He's Ishida to me. So that's usually the way that I'm going to refer to him. Anyway, talking about foreshadowing, right? Um, Spoilers, by the way, for anybody who isn't aware, but this section will contain spoilers for the rest of Bleach, as I talk about how this connects to the rest of Bleach. So, obviously, we know that he hates Soul Reapers because of the whole genocide of his people. Um, that's clearly a pretty big thing, and that he hates Ichigo as well. And there's a lot there. It's kind of interesting to think about, right? And that like Ichigo is intrinsically tied to Yuha Bak, right? Um, and or Yawak or whatever the hell, right? And so there's already that sort of idea that like there is a connection there between these two families and the death of both their mothers, and there's like a lot of connective tissue between Ishida, Ryukin, Ishin, Misaki, and Ichigo. Um, like that kind of shared collective trauma that they have. But it's neat that that's left Ishida kind of in the same place as hating Ichigo, um, or really hating Shinigami. But a lot of that's due to Mayuri. So, and kind of the way that Shinigami have treated Quincy in general. Um, yeah, it's interesting though. I really like Quincy as a concept. I think the idea of humans that can wield spiritual power, right? Because of course, ultimately, as we kind of learn, there's no really difference between humans and uh, like spirits, right? They're all the same. Like one's just incorporeal. But initially, whenever all the realms were one, it was all just people, right? And so some of them became Shinigami by becoming a part of this kind of order, right? Under the Gote and everything. But that was just like a gang of motherfuckers, right? There's like that was all like an emergent social sort of deal, kind of like becoming a samurai or something. Um, and how like a lot of those clans might have grown out of sort of just organized, whatever, right? Bandits or warlords or what have you. So it's interesting to think about, right? The sort of connections there, and how in a lot of ways the Quincy they have power, right? Because they're not just humans that can draw this power, but also they to an extent, right? They all have their power granted from literally like the child of God, Yuha Bak, or child of the Soul King, right? Um, which is essentially like the most that closest that we get to a deific figure within the entirety of this series. Even though we are all talking about these literal gods of death, um, it's not till we really started talking about Soul King and Yuha Bak, which is literally Yahweh, right? Uh, I mean, it's YHWH, so Kubo's not really pulling his punches with the naming there. Anyway, so the idea of them having that kind of power that's on loan, that not every human could become a Quincy, but maybe they could too, if that power was shared with them. So but like normally a human wouldn't normally kind of come to that. Anyway, point is that it's interesting to kind of think about a lot of like how Ichigo and Ishida are in different places at the beginning of this series, and certainly how Ishida's journey would be different if he hadn't had this whole interaction with Ichigo. If Don Kanoji wouldn't have been this connective tissue. I mean, obviously Ishida knows everything about Ichigo, right? He knows that Ichigo is a Soul Reaper, and he knows the nature of Rukia. But I think the whole point is that had it not been for the Don Kanoji incident at the hospital, then Ishida never really would have confronted Ichigo, right? Because, I think there was that moment where Ishida was very clearly going to jump the rope, get involved, destroy this hollow, and that was going to be that. But he didn't. He hesitated, and he saw how Ichigo handled the situation. And then, of course, we saw how Ichigo handled the situation, where it became this whole thing where they, it was like a farcical how they got dragged all around, and then went in the hospital, and then he carried him to the roof, and all this nonsense. So I think that maybe exasperated Ishida to see that, right? To really to have to come to terms with the fact, like, oh, not only do I know this guy's a Shinigami, but he's this piss poor Shinigami. And I think all of Ishida's frustrations have kind of come to a boil. So it's interesting to think that that's like the thing that has him really, because otherwise he's a pretty quiet guy, right? He would keep to himself otherwise. And so I think if had it not been for Don Kanoji, then Ishida never would have really confronted Ichigo, and therefore, whenever Byakuya shows up to take back, Renji and Byakuya, they show up both to take back Rukia, then, sure, Kisuke probably would have helped Ichigo out nevertheless, but then he wouldn't have had all of his friends to rely on, because Chad's full ring and Orihime's powers and Ishida being willing to help out, that they wouldn't have had that sort of connection, because this whole volume wouldn't have happened. So, therefore, whenever Yuha Bak would have come back, right, he might have drafted Ishida into his service, and Ishida never would have betrayed him, because he wouldn't have had these connections to Ichigo, is what I'm saying. So, were it not for Don Kanoji, Yuha Bak would have never been defeated, right? I think I mentioned this in the previous bit, in Rock and Future 7, maybe. Or even Quincy Archer Hates You. But I like the idea. I don't know. Something about it tickles me that if it weren't for Don Kanoji, then maybe Ichigo and Ishida would have never forged this bond, and therefore the Still Silver Arrow would never have been a thing that Ishida, or, that they could have used to actually stop Yuha, and so therefore, ultimately, they would not have been able to win in the battle against them in the Thousand Year Blood War. Or at the very least, things would have been drastically different one way or the other. So it's neat to think about that, like this inciting event, despite feeling like a very minor event in all of Bleach, like this moment is incredibly important because it develops powers for Orihime and Chad, but it also helps to bring Ishida from really hating Shinigami and being like literally like this willing to join with the Quincy and the Stern Ritter and be a part of that army, to having these bonds with Ichigo and being resistant to that. So that's neat. Anyway, long aside. There's mostly because I don't think I have that much else to talk about. They do mention going to nationals and the boys team going as well. I don't think that much gets made out of that. I don't remember Tatsuki doing things in martial arts after she got older. I have to go back and read that epilogue chapter again. Let's see. I love that, of course, Chad is ranked even higher than Ichigo. It's good stuff. Boop, boop, boop. I'm trying to think of some of these other kind of things that might connect. I don't know if the Ichigo really not being able to remember people comes up again. Maybe it does. I'll have to tuck that away, because I don't quite. Obviously, I don't really remember this bit, and I don't remember if it comes up again that Ichigo can't really remember like random ass minor people who come back to face him down. Because I think he certainly remembers like the like various Shinigami he's run into, are even whenever Grimmjow comes and hands him his ass on a platter, and then they run into each other again. So I don't know, like that kind of. I do like that kind of like who, for like a person that feels like they maybe have a stronger connection there. But yeah. Yeah, if you know a time where that comes up elsewhere in the manga, please let me know. Anyway, of course, we get the whole deal with Yoshida being really good at sewing, having this real kind of precision and dexterity to him. I think this whole segment, I remember this very very starkly from the anime. I think it gets played really well in the anime, especially with the glass push. I think those moments get sold a little bit less well in the manga. They're still there, but I think they have less punctuating them. Um, but I don't know. Like I think the idea of him using these tools is really kind of what's meant to be established here. That he has this extreme finesse and capability of using these different tools, which, as we come to find, that's kind of what he does as a Quincy too. So it's neat to see a little bit of that there. Um, again, thinking about kind of the physicality of things, right, and how that connects throughout Bleach. And it's interesting that we do get not Kirio, but the other. Her name's not coming to me. It's not Hikafune. I think that's also Kirio's name. But anyway, the lady in the royal guard that created she creates all the Shu Hakusho, right? That she's responsible for that. Um, she gives Ichigo the whole new outfit. Same thing with Kiraku, Shunsui. So it's interesting to think that like sewing is still and like outfits obviously are an important kind of thing in Bleach, and so Ishida's sewing maybe kind of connects into that to a degree, um, if not explicitly, at least the idea that he's kind of more involved than you might think. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like it's a subtle thing, but I think it's important that like he has that sort of skill to him. Anyway, I mentioned before that like I felt like the what should I call it the Reiraku is a Quincy technique, and like that's kind of Ichigo naturally using it without training indicates him being more aligned with Quincy than in a Shinigami. Though Rukia does indicate that it's in fact something that Shinigami can do, and Ishida also brings that up, right? That a good Soul Reaper could see it right away, and a skilled Soul Reaper can even touch it. And if he was any good, that he'd notice his. But then I don't think the Reiraku ever comes up another time, other than whenever Ichigo's training to get his Bankai with the Tenshin Tai, right? So it leads me to wonder if it really is a Soul Reaper technique. Maybe it's something that Soul Reapers can do with training, but the only time that we ever see it used is by Quincy characters. And so, I don't know, it's just like a very minor kind of visual thing, and I think, maybe, let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if there is some moment somewhere else in Bleach where we see a Shinigami actually use the Reiraku, but I'm pretty sure we only ever see Quincy use it. And specifically only ever see Ichigo and Ishida use it. And so I think that's kind of neat if that's the case. Like I said, I think that's a case for Ichigo having these Quincy powers, not realizing it. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's definitely something there. Yeah, that basically it all connects. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, yeah, the did you even know that a Soul Reaper's Reiraku is a different color? I think the idea that Ichigo didn't even think to notice might also key into the whole Quincy thing. I don't know. I'm not sure. Right. Also, why would it feels like I feel like there maybe something there also with a Soul Reapers being red and having that red Rairaku. Because right now Ichigo is borrowing the powers of Rukia, right? So you would have a red Reiraku to indicate that he's a Soul Reaper. But I'll have to keep in mind too whenever we get to the chapter where he uses the Reiraku to find his sword if it is also red, thus indicating that it is actually Zangetsu or not. I wonder. Um, but yeah, it's neat. Certainly something to think about. Anyway, um, yeah, I don't remember also what Ruki is doing over here at the Urahara shop. So that's another aspect of this. I'm realizing how much stuff I didn't remember, which is kind of a fun thing. But also the idea that he considers this a game. Um, it's interesting because there's very much a lot of like this like sort of Quincy mentality that I think Kubo went back and lifted from early Ishida to kind of paint how a lot of the Sternritter act, right? Where we certainly have Sternritter who treat their sort of rivalry with the Shinigami as a game. I know one thing that gets brought up a lot also is, in that Thousand Year Blood War, people really wonder why Mayuri really doesn't get his comeuppance despite being this person who's, got this very rich history of genociding the Quincy. And I think the answer is that already got handled whenever Ishida blasted Mayuri, in the Soul Society arc. Um, and I think the reason why Kubo doesn't retread that is because that structure doesn't earn him anything for a retread, whereas the bigger picture is that Shinigami and Quincy have always sort of been at odds with each other. And that it's not just Mayuri genociding them. It's like a structural thing in general. So yeah, I don't know. That's all I kind of have for this chapter, really. Not unless a lot else to talk about. Um, but if you did notice something that I didn't, either in analysis or in connections, feel free to let me know. As always, tag things inside of the comments as spoilers. They're spoilers. I don't want first-time readers getting spoiled on stuff unless they want to be. But that's it for this one. I appreciate you watching it. Thanks for getting through another one of these videos. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. And I'll see you in the comments, or you'll hear me in the next one. Take care. This has been Karkur Gold, and as always, spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.